how do you, I think you touched on this already, but like, how do you keep organized? Because world building can be a massive undertaking, and you were telling us about all the stuff, terms, and how it's governed. And so, how do you keep yourself organized? Like, what programs do you use, or just what's your, how do you just do
I
it?
use OneNote. I dump everything into OneNote. And my OneNote is divided by, so there's overall tasks for the world, the overarching tabs that say like religion, magic, like how it works, because there are different spells and you have to keep track of those. If she says levitate to levitate, then you don't put the end spell for her to come back down. She'll be floating the whole damn book. So you got to make sure you have that. So, um, so yes, I have different tabs in my OneNote. And in my OneNote are links, are images, and when I pick images from ArtStation or someplace like that, I always include the artist. In case I want to reach out to them and be like, hey, can I use this image? Or if I'm posting it online, saying this was an inspiration, I want to be able to make sure I credit the artist that I got it from. I also like do that for my YouTube videos. I just click the link and dump it in so that I have those. My research links also go like if I'm like for each, and so my main characters all have their own tab. Like Prentice has her own tab, and so her application, where was she born, how old is she, how many brothers and sisters she has, those types of things are kept in the tab in an overarching tab because she's the main character for the whole series. And then I have separate tabs for each novella. And then the specific information, what city, what net, like what nest, what egg, what dove, plot line, conflict, external, internal, that kind of stuff. That's how I keep it all like together. I use a OneNote. But I am also a fan of Evernote. So that is also a good one. I am not a fan of Google Docs. I know some people use that. I do have my Reaper Bible on that. I'm looking to move it, but I have used it before. It's just not as good as OneNote. Um, and so those are the things I use. You could use a plain old Word document. I've used those before too to keep track of my items. It's less clean for me because I'm slightly I need it right. So,
Yeah.
but it is an option because you can add the same things you put in a OneNote. You can add links and videos and all those things in there as well.
Because when I used the Windows computer, I used to use Microsoft Word because that's all I knew
Mm-hmm.
then. And what I would do is style my Microsoft Word documents as wiki pages
Mm-hmm.
and then hyperlink each file that
Mm-hmm.
I need or that was referenced in that particular document. So
Yep.
that way I don't have to go out of there, go to a folder and find that other file when I could just click it and go to it.
Yep.
But when I tried to transfer that over to my Mac, it broke all the links. And even
Mm-hmm.
when I went back and tried to relink them, it still didn't work. So after that, I just kind of found and transitioned into Scrivener, and I've just
Mm-hmm.
been sticking with that ever since. But I'm looking into using World Amble just to see how I
That
guess it
works.
is as well. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
So
Scrivener makes my head hurt. And you think I would love it because it's so organized, but it's like it's too many boxes. I cannot. I just I can't. But I have other friends, other writer friends that like Brittany that love it. So um, but those are so you have options for how to organize your world building stuff.
Just get
and
a pen and paper.
That's also a good method, pen and paper. I'm neurotic, so I like would rewrite it over and over again. And if I mess up, I rip out all the sheets. So that's why I need something online.
Oh no.
like you
Yeah.
mentioned magic in your world,
Mm-hmm.
so hard magic or soft magic? That's been a debate or a thing for the past couple of years. Thanks, Brandon.
Right. So right. So I think we use soft magic. We don't use a lot of hard magic stuff. Yet I think the more the series goes on, the more progressive that will become. Um, only because of the main focus is they're called Kingdom of Avis Mystery. So they're all around mysteries, right? So the first one is a serial killer, the second one is a stolen crown. Um, but as the series goes on, the level of magic being abused will increase. And there's an overarching reason for that. And so it will eventually start to become from very soft magic to hard magic.
Cool.
Mine has
So,
a little bit of everything.
Is it?
Well, I'm working on, well, like the different ones. So the Bogar series, which is based on like the boogeyman myth, um, they do a lot of like soft magic. Like mostly the only magic that they do is like the portals.
Hmm.
And then I have the actual like witch series who has like different like types of magic.
Hmm.
So I guess it just depends on what I'm writing and how I want to interpret the world.
That's true.
Like both.
yeah, the only thing is, it's just keeping it consistent
Hmm.
and not to abuse it, which is a danger with soft magic sometimes.
Right.
Where, like, you can say, like, for example, this is anime or older anime, but Kiki's Delivery Service, the main character is a
Hmm.
witch. So, in our traditional sense of which you would probably think of, oh, like Harry Potter, but she doesn't perform any of that magic
Mm-mm.
whatsoever. The most magic that she has is what, flying on a broom and talking to a
Yep.
cat,
Yep.
and that's it.
That's it.
But if that's the case and that's how you set it up, she can't then later on at the climax or at the most critical part of the story where she has to figure out how to get out of the situation. You can't have her suddenly know how to bring up a Patronus or something. Like, and that's
Right.
the danger. It's like, oh, she's a witch, so she should know spells. So let's have her do a spell. Like, no, you didn't. You didn't
Hey, your
introduce
readers.
that.
So if you think about like Avatar: The Last Airbender, you get to watch Aang and Korra to a certain degree, but you get to watch Aang develop the skills necessary to defeat Ozai, right? And so you watch him through season after season acquire the bending skills he needs to defeat his opponent in the end. So it makes sense. It's not a cheat. It's not a you see him fail. Like the first time he tries to fight Ozai, he gets his behind whooped, right? So I think if you do it that way, as you see the same thing in Harry Potter too over time. Less in Harry Potter because I feel like Hermione does a lot of the work for him. Um, that's on my okay. That's Nicole's own personal opinion. It's not the opinion of the right talk. Um,
No, it
but
is. It is. No, no, we all have an opinion.
so I would like to use Aang because I feel like those creators and writer handled Aang's development a lot better to be like the Avatar, better than Harry becoming the one savior worked. So I think if it's done in that way, it's really well done. I know that in like the Kingdom of Avis, every bit of magic that they do has a negative. And so that's a big theme is if you're going to use magic, there's a cost. Um, and I talk about Prentice's mom being blind and braiding her hair at their home by the sea, right? It's kind of awful that the order just uses the hawks up and once they're blind dispatches them. You're done. We're done. And there's an ugly underbelly to the order. Um, into their way of life, right? Because you have all these birds, all these people that live outside the egg that don't benefit or reap the benefits of living within the egg shell. And so there is a lot of, and Prentice, of course, doesn't see any of this because she's all about her job. But there are instances ever increasing that which each novella where she's going to be able to see like, wait a minute, we talk, I think about, and it's proposed how great Avis is and its structure is, but is it really? And so that's kind of theme work in your world building is also important, right? And we wouldn't be able
Have
to touch that theme if it wasn't for the setup or the arrangement for how their world is comprised.
What you say, Sheena?
For our watchers who don't necessarily know what the difference between hard and soft magic is, would you give them a quick rundown of what the like
Brittany
in
probably knows it better than I do.
Well, just in a general nutshell, horror magic almost borderlines being sci-fi, where there
Mhm.
are discernible rules for how the magic operates. So, like, what's an example?
The
Like,
force.
I'll take Brandon Sanderson's Miss Bourne, yeah, where they ingest metal, and different metals have different effects. So, like, oftentimes in the book, I can't remember which metal does what, so visit his website to find that out. But like for some metals, you can ingest and you can push and pull on things.
Hmm.
Now, in some instances, in maybe another completely different book by somebody else, when you can maybe able to push a building like your Superman, but in his, he basically tells you that you cannot push something that you don't have the strength to move naturally.
Right.
So that's like me ingesting metal to be able to push something. I can't push this house. I I can't do that.
can't you?
So I wish, but that's where what is it? No, I can't pull the house, but I can push off of it. So I can basically launch myself
Hmm.
in a different direction. So those are like hard and fast discernible rules, whereas soft magic is just, hey, it's just here. There's no
It's the
explanation of how
force
it gets here. Yeah, but even that's an explanation though.
that they
But for
break
some,
constantly.
so there's like no discernible rules. There's no discernible cause. There's no. It's just, hey, these people can do magic, and that's it, and that's fine. But like I said, the one of the dangers with
Hmm.
soft magic is people exploiting it and not
Hmm.
adequately being consistent. I guess just being consistent. Like I said, if
Right.
like Kiki in Kiki's Delivery Service. She's a
Hmm.
witch, but she doesn't do spells like Harry Potter and them. So you can't have her near the end certainly learn a magic spell unless you show
And
her.
using it right.
Yeah, you unless you show her practicing it or having used it earlier in the story.
The consistency
So
is the key, right? So the label of soft or hard, I mean, but the consistency is where it's at with any magic system you incorporate. Any superpowers you give your monsters. If monsters like if orcs do this, orcs don't do that, right? If orcs can only like tear apart, they don't fly, right? Unless suddenly you created an orc with wings, but they don't fly, right? That would be weird because orcs are ground troops. They're cannon fodder. They're massive amounts of. That's not their purpose. That's not how they. Right. So, I, as long as you're consistent, I think you'll be fine. Um, but like I said, with Prentice using her hawk powers, there's a scene in Kill Three Birds where she uses them and she doesn't turn it off. And she uses them so much they actually cut themselves off. And she's blind for like 20 minutes.
and
Um
health is very important too.
yeah, and she just ends up sitting on the sidewalk outside the suspect's house. And it's like 10 o'clock at night. Of course the Eagles show up. They're like, ma'am, you don't belong in this neighborhood. What are you doing out here? She's like, I'm sitting on a sidewalk. And so she gets harassed by the Eagles because some of the residents have called and said there's a strange woman outside their residence. She's like, I'm literally sitting on the sidewalk. And so they go through this thing of she doesn't have identification, of course. 'Cause obviously, she's a hawk. She has wings. Not everyone has wings, which should be included in the Eagles, but they harass her anyway. And they end up calling the dove on the bird caller, and he was like, "Yes, she's a hawk. I can verify her identity."
Wow.
Blah 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 blah. But she can't see them because she's blind because she
I
overused
feel
her.
like I'm gonna go through like such turmoil reading this book. I already know.
So that's one of the things. Like she has to be very selective when she engages that power. It's a great power to have, right? She can see the unseen. But the issue becomes Princess can't use it all the time because she's like in year 5 of being a hawk. And so she's already experiencing, because it gets worse the more you use it. So she's already experiencing 10 to 15 minutes of blindness after engaging it, right? From her human eyesight. And so it's taking longer and longer for her human eyesight to return. And eventually she'll get to that point like her mother did where it won't come back at all. And she'll be retired from the order. And she'll be sent home to produce more little hawks for the order.
And see, and that creates conflict in it of itself and tension because now she has to figure out when and how long to use it.
Exactly.
So there may be a situation that may be going on, and she was like, "Oh, I could use my eyesight," but then if she does and she goes blind, and then something worse happens where her eyesight is really needed, then it's like
she can't.
Oh, crap.
Right, and that's what happened in this situation. She, and I don't want to spoil a lot of it, but she gets impatient. And she's like, I'll just take care of it myself. I want to go tonight. I want to do it now. And she flies over to this, and because she's wings, but she needs her hawk vision to see down to the specific houses because a human eye can't see that. And so, number one, she has wings that she's chosen to use. There's a consequence to using your wings. It tires you out, right? So she's exhausted by the time she finds the place. She's tired, but she can still do the interviews. But she's engaged her hawk eyesight so she can see the houses. Once she lands, she can't turn it off because she wants to go into the suspect's house and be able to read everybody's faces and be able to see, right, the things that they try to hide, right? Blood, like she can see like blood. She's like luminol. She can see things like luminol, things light up, right? And so she can see all those things that they think they've covered up. And so she's like, I want to be able to go, I'm going into the house. I want to be able to see all the details. I'm not going to turn it off. But she's had it by the time she's done interviewing the family of 2 aunts, like 12 people. By the time she leaves, she's had it on too long. And her eyes are like blurry and watering, and because it's her hawk eyes. And so to the point where it's so painful, they just switch off. Like her body just says enough, and she can't see anything.
Another good example of that is All Might from My Hero Academia.
Yes.
Like he does that to the point where he's just like, and when we introduced to him, you already see like as soon as he like transformed back to himself,
the effect on him.
It looks like a little skeleton. And so we already know that like one, something is wrong. You know, and he eventually explains it to us. Then he gets to the point where like every time he uses it, he has the ability to hold that magic like less and less time. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
And this can be applicable to werewolves. Like it seems like people don't employ it's a painful transformation anymore. They just transform. Like there is no cause. Like what if, you know, when you transform into a werewolf, that werewolf instincts become stronger and stronger each time? And how would that affect their interaction in the human environment as a human when they're posing as a human? So if you're becoming more ferocious and vicious or acting more and more like a wolf, like how will that affect their relationships with people around them?
That actually happens in one of my stories. That he's suppressing his alphaness in support of his brother, because his brother's older. His brother raised him. Naturally, he's just a leader, but he wasn't born with the alpha gene. So the younger brother suppresses that, but each time that he turns into the wolf, that alpha comes out a little more, that wolf starts to take over a little bit more, and it kind of drives him nuts. So
that actually happened in like Ursula Le Guin's Wizard of Earthsea series, where the wizard is an otter. He transforms into an otter and he forgets. Like Guin he forgets to transfer back. He just loves being an otter. Like he just loses so much of his humanity the longer he stays an otter that he starts to forget that he was a person. And so I feel like that and I think I agree with Brittany, sometimes that gets lost, like the negative consequences of using magic. Like there's no consequence for using it, right? But if you think about it, if you think about like in Full Metal, right? If you use that kind of alchemy, right? There's a law of equivalent exchange.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you give something, it's going to take something. Magic doesn't come from a vacuum. Where is it coming from? Like, where is it pulling from? It's either pulling from your life force, it's either pulling from the things
Your
around
environment.
you, the
Yeah.
ground, something. Like it again, it doesn't just appear. It has to come from somewhere. It's if it's a form of matter, right? It's magic. And so that law of equivalent exchange gets lost for some authors. They just like, oh, we have magic and it's awesome. Like in my story, The Wicked Wild, which is a weird Western story, the protagonist calls on her ancestors to help her with some crazy people in the West. But it cost her, like she ends up like vomiting up blood. Like it cost her, physically cost her to pull that element down. Like it wreaks havoc on her body.
The Order does that too. That show on Netflix. Have y'all seen it?
Is that
Like
the
every time.
Magician's knockoff? I'm sorry. Someone I know called it that, and I don't like the Magicians. So I was like, okay, if it's a Magician's knockoff, I'm really not going to watch it. But if you tell me it's good, I might give it a second chance.
I have
I'm
been
not looking at
and I
it.
watched I started a lot.
Okay. Okay.
I haven't seen it.
But I thought the way that they use magic was interesting. Like they have to have something to balance it. Like they use blood magic, so you have to like cut your hand and say the spell, or else it's gonna bounce back. It's gonna bounce on like the next person around you or something like that.
Oh,
So I thought that was interesting.
that is
they
neat.
use their use that magic, and it happens a lot in the story. They have an interesting take on werewolves too, so you might want to watch it just for like the
Okay, I
concept.
might want to watch it now because yeah.
Because like the plot line is a little but the actual like magic and the history of that magic is interesting. Content wise is great. Look, Brittany's like,
Right, there's just some things you can tell that you know what you're used to reading and watching, and you can often tell by the cover whether it's going to be worth your time. So I'm kind of like that. I look at it, I'm like, no, because I had that same feeling about Curse, and I am so mad I wasted my time watching that show.
I'm sorry.
with what?
Curse.
I waited. I've now started waiting, and I have people that are friends of mine, and I trust their judgment. If they say it's not worth their time or they can't get through the first 2 or 3 episodes, I don't even bother because I know I won't either. And someone wrote back and it was like, "Oh my gosh, it had such a good premise and it's just so poorly executed." And I was like, "Okay, no, not gonna do it."
They're not jiving. Like I guess it depends on if you read fantasy a lot or into world building and stuff. But you had a superpower, and all you did was cry the entire series, and then you want to woman up at the end, and it's like, no, I can't take you serious. I wasted.
That'll put me off too.
Immediately. See, that was me with the Nun with the Gun movie. What's it called? Nuns with Guns? No, it's
Is it
like
Warrior?
No, it's on Netflix. It was
I know what you're talking about.
Is it Warrior Nuns? No,
yes, that one, Warrior Nun. Thank you. Nuns with Guns is an anthology put together by Blaze Ward. Okay, so Warrior Nun. My husband watched it and it was on, and I was like trying to write. And I'm like, "What are you watching?" And then I was watching it, and the more I watched it, the angrier I got. I'm like, "Are you serious? Is this a CW show?" Because it was really bad. I was like, this chick has a halo in her back, and she is spending the whole time getting drunk, partying, boinking the same guy, and running from her destiny until the end.
I know.
And even then, she botches it. Spoiler alert. And yeah, I was just done. I was so done with that show. I was with Brittny, with Kurtz. I'm like, I cannot believe I wasted my time on this. Give Shotgun Mary her own show.
And it starts out, you're thinking like, ooh, they coming in hot, like this is really gonna be good. And like,
Yes.
why am
And
I
then it
5
just
episodes in
flatlines.
and she's still like,
Floodlights.
I'm
Yes.
serious. I'm serious. It's
oh,
like
the
it
first
never reaches a
episode,
climax.
then like let's
Dude,
I feel
Shotgun
like
Mary is
that's
the only thing
Netflix
that's good about that show.
control.
Shotgun Mary is the only reason why I kept watching.
that's true.
And I was just like, can she have her own show? Because
Right.
I was
Did
mad.
y'all hear that is that the American Horror Story Angela Bassett's character?
I
Somebody.
heard that was just a rumor that she wasn't.
Oh,
doing
was it a
They
rumor?
wanted to Nurse Ratchet though.
Oh.
Maybe
Yeah,
they will.
I thought the Angela Bassett one was like a fan made
Is that what it was?
image, but it's not a thing that's happening. It's a thing that should happen, but it's not
I would watch
happening.
the hell out of that. Like if you put that on right now, I'm like,
Right?
girl, I gotta go.
I know.
I would
Or we
totally
can either
watch
group
it.
watch or I can leave. One of the two.
Seriously, I would totally watch it. Oh man. I don't know. I was so disappointed in that, but I was redeemed by the old guard. So I was happy with that one.
Okay. I guess since we're coming up on time, really quick, I guess, what are some resources people can use to help with world building that you know of? Or could you just tell them to freewheel it?
Oh, there are okay. I'm trying to think of the sites because I free will it, but I've been doing this for 20 years. But I still sometimes use like Vanessa Goop, oh, what is Vanessa's last name? She has a good site that has like author tips and like sheets to help you plan, like in regards to world building. And I will send the link to you guys later. I mean, I would definitely go to places like Sifwa. They have like free resources for authors in terms of world building. There are tons of free classes online about world building from experts. Get them from experts. Don't not just anyone who says they're an expert. Get them from authors that you trust and know and have heard of. Um, yeah, there are plenty of YouTube clips on world building. Like it's one of those things where you kind of got to figure it out for yourself what works for you. But there are many different tools you can use to develop your toolbox for world building. Like,
Boom. There you go. Mhm.
Yeah.
Any questions from you guys?
Let's see. What have I
I'm
done?
just happy to be here.
me too. Me too. I'm just happy to be here.
I'm just over here geeking in my own little corner.
Aren't we all?
It's not my strong suit. Like I can give you a character. Like I can build you a character. I can tell you some backstory, but like the world itself is the problem, which I also have a problem with. Like magic inside the world as a whole. But working for like that one or two people, I'm pretty good at it. So like for my witch series, there is you have like word magic, you have intuition magic, you have stone magic, but I don't, and I know how that like counteracts and all that stuff, but to say like where all that magic came from, like the history of that magic, like the big stuff.
Like you should like build a table, like just a regular Excel table, and you should just put like on the side, and like on one, like the running column on the side could be for the rows. You just label them like stone magic, and then the spells, and then across, and then what cancels out, right? But in terms of like creating like the mythology around where it came from, I mean, there are
You may
many.
not need it.
Huh? You may not need it, or you may want to research like ancient civilizations that are no longer in existence and how they are purported to have used stone magic or whatever, and see how they did it, and then tweak it.
Like if it's not going to really play a huge part in your story, I wouldn't suggest going in depth. Like I told y'all about mine a couple of days or so ago, because for my world, I'm building a really big world because all my stories are going to be set in that world.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure all my ducks are in a row and I know how things happen, where stuff came from, so that
Mm-hmm.
even if two stories have no relation to each other, they're still
Mm-hmm.
in existence in this world and still
Mm-hmm.
abide by those rules.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas for you, the mythology will more than likely won't play a huge part, but for me,
Right.
it's going to be there.
That's the question we talked about earlier. It's like, depending on how much depth you need, depends on if it's a series and how big that series is going to be, right? If it's going to be a 3-book series and you're done, that's one thing. It's going to be a 10-book series where you have different arcs every 3 books or every 4 books. That's a different conversation. So that's part of that planning piece up front. Like, how do you want it to be? And like, you could do what Stephen King did, which he wrote all those books and then he was like, oh, I'm gonna tether it to the Dark Tower. This could be a Dark Tower book. And he just started tethering them all together. And so that he didn't actually have to, he spent a lot of time building the Dark Tower world, but every book he wrote after that has some connection back to the Dark Tower. That's on purpose. Like, that's by design. But the initial series was only like, the initial series ended up being like 3 books. And then he had to go back. If you guys, I don't know if you know anything about the Dark Tower, but Stephen King had rewritten the first 2 books of the Dark Tower, first 3 books of the Dark Tower series to match the other books in the series. Because when he first started writing it, he didn't expect it to be a series. Now it's his magnum opus. So if Stephen King himself, Mr. Moneymaker, had to go back and rewrite, don't worry about it. Just do the best you can.
Yeah, man.
Life lessons.
Life lessons.
For real. You can always go back and remake.
Yeah.
Nothing says you can't.
Stephanie Meyer's rewriting her first book and calling it another name.
Oh gosh.
Just throwing it out there.
So they're like, this is Twilight from Edward's perspective. I'm like, what if we don't care?
But is it going to change is my question. Like, so you're doing it from his point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to change any of the other events we've already seen? Because I feel like I've paid for this book already. Is where I'm at with that.
Like, didn't
I think it might be
a long time ago though, because I remember reading something like that. Or she
didn't she do something like I agree with you. I think she did do something similar to that.
I thought it was leaked. Like, maybe that's what you're thinking of. Like,
I wasn't leaked. I'm sorry, I read it.
I think that book was leaked, and like she's like, "No, I'm gonna make this money. I'm gonna release this today anyway. Sorry, not sorry." And people are buying it, so I get well played, ma'am.
I am over the Twilight world, so I will not be reading it again. But love to all y'all.
Want to invest.
I wouldn't be over the Twilight world if she was going to talk about other characters, though. Like, so what happened with Emma and Rose? Like, what are they doing? I don't need Edward's perspective of the events that I've already seen. I'm not paying another $15 for the same book. I will not.
That's kind of where I was like, okay, first of all, I stopped up the book too because I was like, I'm done with this. But I definitely think that if she had done like other characters in that world, that would be a lot more interesting. And a great way to recapture readers, right? But I don't want to. It's just like getting Harry Potter from Hermione's perspective. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't care. But a story about Hermione as an adult working,
that would be something.
That would be something, right?
Yeah.
So
But I'm also over like the insta love thing. So like I probably wouldn't even like pick it up. I was like, oh, that's a pretty book cover, but like,
is that because you're like over 12? You're older than 12.
I'm just like,
oh man. But I mean, it is what it is. Right. Someone's gonna buy it. That's what all those 50 Shades of Grey books too. Like they appeal to a certain audience. That insta love. That he's a billionaire and he likes little old me. Little old me. It's romantic, I guess, for some. So
well, I mean,
I cannot get
right.
So whatever.
Say it again.
And then Massimo gave his chick 365 days to fall in love. So that's not insta-ish. I mean, he gave her time. He kidnapped her. I don't
Wow.
understand why, but
We don't read kidnapping books either.
it's so pointless. He was taking her away from a life she was already not happy in. Like all he had to do was show up with some flowers and that really nice car. What are you do? Why are you risking jail time for this? Like I don't. I
Control.
need like I don't.
Talk about world building. No, that's crazy. Like what? I wonder like who, like what went through that author's head when they started writing that and think like, oh, this would be
Like what this
attractive.
kidnapping.
You
Like
know,
that's what
like,
this book is meant to say.
No.
at all.
Uh-uh.
So yeah. I'll read those. I think I was telling them one time that I read a book that actually had, it didn't make any lick of sense, honestly. Like the guy kidnapped the girl. He I'm not even gonna say he was watching her, like he was literally passing through. She was going out by herself, far out on the farm, checking the checking the part that the broken fence or something, and he ends up kidnapping her later on that night and just taking her off. And like you turn the page and she's already just like eating food, laughing with him. And I was just like, how did that happen?
It doesn't. It doesn't. It's probably a man writing under a female pen name. I'm so serious because no woman is fantasizing about being kidnapped by a stranger and falling into instant love. That's a man who wrote that under a pen name.
Like, but even still, though, explain why. Okay, you're going to kidnap her. Okay, you naturally your person is going to resist. So why isn't she resisting? Does he have a spell on her? Did he make her forget? Can he practice magic? Like, why?
Even still, all of those things don't give her consent.
No.
So it's already problematic on its face.
Why?
I mean, for this reader, it may not be problematic for some other readers, but for this reader, it's problematic for me just in general. There's no consent.
Yeah.
Bewitching someone with magic to fall in love with you is not consent. And so I have issue with that. So I have issue with all the fairy tales. So I'm just gonna kiss her because she's asleep. Dude, did you ask? Maybe she's trying to touch her hand. I have issues, so you try to wake her when she's dead. She's in stasis.
Leave her alone.
Only a kiss will do. Really?
Well, the original fairy tales are really horrible.
I'm sorry.
They don't ever really explain why that's the way to wake her up. Like
that's true.
Like Brittany said, if you're going to make that the way it's going to be, then could you explain why that's the generally accepted way that this happens? Maybe a temperature thing. I don't know. I got nothing. I'm just throwing stuff out there.
That was in a few of the fairy tales, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
you know, again, two dudes wrote that. So just saying. Two guys wrote that. No, Hans Christian Ray, yeah, his brother. The two guys wrote that. So
it's so crazy that when you're young, that you don't really question those things. And also the fact that like our parents let us watch things like that. Like they weren't really thinking of like, we probably shouldn't be kissing on a dead girl.
To be fair, Disney sanitizes a lot of that stuff. So when they show it, it looks real romantic. Oh my gosh, she's out there in the woods by herself. There's animals everywhere. Everyone's singing and dancing. I didn't know owls could wear clothes. Who knew? Who knew? I mean, we got crabs singing. I got nothing. Like,
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Oh, no, read it. Go ahead.
Jacqueline said, "Yeah, I can't handle books anymore that make borderline abusive behavior romantic."
Yeah, nope.
Like for real. Like,
speaking of all the romance, so I don't think we touched on like too much of the romance in y'all books. Is romance like a big factor in your books? like how do you balance it out for that?
And you do a lot of world building for that.
Yeah.
Like,
It's not like prominent. It's not a prominent thing in my books. It happens,
Mhm.
but it. I'm just gonna be me. Like I don't like that fantasy is finally getting attention because of George R. R. Martin's um, series because it is like just so intense. I couldn't even read the first book, so and like and other fantasies that are constantly coming out like that, and I'm like, can we just have some like old school like go on an adventure and save the world,
Questing.
like
We need questings.
like and the character grows and develops and changes and find
Mhm.
out who they are and is victorious, but it's like it now all fantasy must have sex at least. Like I can't. Like
at
it irritates.
Mhm. So I agree with Brittany. If like Sybil has relationships with people, um, but because she's a PI and she's a bit of a she's callous a little bit, so she doesn't have it's difficult to make for her to maintain relationships with people. She has trust issues galore. And so it happens, right? When it happens. What it doesn't do is happen every 30 pages. So it's like he doesn't do that. So yeah, there is romance in the books because romance is a part of life. And if you have characters that are well-rounded, at some point they fall in love, they like people, they have urges, they have wants, they have needs. It happens, but it's not the driving force. So in another life, under a different pen name, I used to write erotic interracial romance to the tune of like 80 titles. And so yeah, we won't be talking about it tonight. Just know that with those, you also have to world build, and especially if you're doing the ones that are not contemporary. And I wrote contemporary ones, and I also wrote, you know, science fiction romance, fantasy romance, paranormal romance. And so like for my shifter series that are all dragons, I had a world build for that. So yeah. It depends, but yeah, I had to world build different clans, different types of dragons, other shifters in the world, how the public, same thing we talked about earlier. How does the public respond now that they know that dragons are actually shifters? How do you do it when a man who's like 6'2" shifts into a, 2-ton dragon? That's a problem. Wearing his clothes when he ships back, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, all those things are, you still have to
Taken
world
for
build for that
granted.
too. Even for romance, you have to world build if you're writing
Yeah,
paranormal or urban fantasy, right?
and especially if they come from even fictional cultures, because you do run into cultural issues if you're dating outside of your race or your
Yep.
culture.
Yep.
So that plays a factor in how the characters will behave and all
Yep.
that jazz. But I
Yep.
agree, none of that insta love thing. You might be instantly attracted, but not all that like you said, every 10 pages or so. Like that, it gets tiresome. It
it
gets
is
tiresome.
boring.
Oh my gosh, it did. Like I had to quit. I started writing it to take a break from writing science fiction. That ended up being like a 7-year journey. And at some point, I'm like, I can't write this anymore. Like I just can't. Like I just was exhausted. And so I ended up going back to writing science fiction and fantasy under my name now. But it was like, whew.
Like if I have to have romance in mind, I would
I love
hope
how
I
Brittany
can.
says if I have to.
Like, I would
Twist
want
her
it to.
arm. Twist her arm.
I would want it to like emulate the dynamic from Gargoyles, the
Mhm.
main characters, because the payoff didn't come until the end.
Yep.
The end of the second season,
Yep.
first season, first or second season, but
That was the
it
second
wasn't
season when that
instantly.
happened. No, it wasn't
I think
immediate.
yeah, like they didn't kiss until like the very last
It
episode.
built over time. No, I agree with that. I like that slow build too. It seems the more realistic, though. You guys know, like there are times where it's just instant chemistry with someone.
Hmm.
But that doesn't always happen. And so I am always disappointed when I'm like, really another insta love one, okay, because I'd like to see some variety. And it isn't, oh God, I hate that guy so much. And then by the end of the book, oh my God, I love that guy so much. I'm like tired of that too. So I just kind of kind of needed some variety beyond that. Maybe mix it up. I don't know. I don't write too much romance anymore, but yeah, I do
Like,
publish it though, so
just so y'all are aware.
I still read it. We still don't have enough paranormal romance stories, so but
Y'all,
yeah. I
I'm like
don't
50-50.
write it anymore, so I'm always on the lookout for really good paranormal fantasy romance. Yeah.
I think I'm 50-50 on it. Like in I Am Sasha Grey, like she is
Hmm.
full blown, like she has her boyfriends.
Hmm.
So it happens, and I think I do an okay job with it. Because it's I don't like the fantasy of love.
Mm.
I like basing it in like with real world consequences,
Hmm.
actions, and things like that. Um, and then I have in the Boga series, um, she kind of so how it starts out is she lost her memory. She really doesn't know who anybody is, and the only thing that she can remember is how she feels about them, and that's
Hmm.
how she identifies them.
Hmm.
So she has this boyfriend that she feels very strongly about,
Hmm.
um, and so when she and he's a wolf. So when they are together,
Hmm.
um, she knows that she loves him, but she also knows that like there's an underlying like issue as to why she loves him.
There's something else, right?
Yeah. So I still try to keep it like, because I don't want the whole book to be like, oh gosh, I'm so in love with David. You know what I mean? Like, I want her to be able to have like her own life and
Hmm.
her pet peeves and all that good stuff. But but yeah, I try to balance whenever there's a love element inside my story. I try to like balance it out with something that's
Hmm.
a mystery or something.
I think that's smart. Like because I mean, romance. I have a lot of friends. I have a couple of friends who are big time romance authors, and honestly, they will tell you if it's all just about the every 10 pages someone's getting down. It's not a story. It's
Mhm.
porn. And so they're like, they want a story. They need something else to happen. Are we fighting the government? Are we trying to get my child back, right, from a previous relationship? Like, what are we doing? Where is the conflict, right? And are
Yeah.
we doing this together? So that's it. That's important. I agree with you. You have to balance that. I agree.
I'm actually more forgiving of instant chemistry when it's a side character because you're clearly not going to be spending that much time building them up if you're doing everything with your main character. So if your
Hmm.
side characters like hit it off, I'm like, okay, that's cute. But please don't, if you do it with the main character, like this is some BS.
Yeah.
It's hypocritical. I understand
Yes.
that. But
I hear you
that
on
is
that.
unfortunately the reality. Like side characters falling in love. Oh my God, like main character. Oh, he's a hoe.
Okay.
Like, no,
Got some
he didn't.
issues.
Like, whatever.
Yeah, I had to exit writing romance when harem stories started. I was like, that works for certain people, that doesn't work for me as a reader or as a writer. And so I had
A
to.
lot of work to write those stories.
It is, and I'm like, oh, can you? Okay, we're not going to veer off. I was like, just trying to imagine. I read Laura K. Hamilton used to write those Meredith Gentry books, and she had like a whole bunch of lovers. And those books were very difficult for me to keep up with. And they had a really great like premise
That seems to be a
outside of
thing with
that.
her though, because
Huh?
the Anita Blake. That seems to be a thing with Laurel K. Hamilton, because the Anita Blake series, after about book 5, it started doing the same thing, like where
Yeah.
she had
Because
lots.
Laurel K. Hamilton started engaging in poly. I think she's poly, right? Um,
No, oh,
yeah. So and
makes
has
more
been for
sense.
about probably roughly the same time that started showing
Mhm.
up in Anita Blake's series, which I found like Meredith Gentry starts off like that, and so I was okay with that. But Anita was a virgin in book 1 in Guilty Pleasures, right? And like a straight up virgin. And so to have her 4 books after that be like sleeping with everything that breathes.
But still working. She's sleeping with like 5 guys,
Mm-hmm.
being a necromancer, holding
Yep.
down a job,
Yep.
running a government.
Yep. Like all of those things, it just
A lot.
she ended up
At the
getting
same time.
like, well, she ended up having like Superman problem, right?
Mm.
You have so many things that you're almost undefeatable. So where's conflict?
Then you get bored. No more
Yeah,
story.
then you get bored, right? So I haven't read her in like 6 years, and I used to love her. I
Yeah.
used to like devour those books, devour them. But so you have to be careful. I know that she lost some fans, when she did that. It was so, for me, it was so out of character for Anita, who was so staunch, right, in those first 5 books,
Yeah.
first 4 books, about so staunch in her positions, to have her pivot in such a grandiose way. It wasn't gradual, right? Which I think I could have appreciated a little bit more had Anita gradually evolved to this sexual goddess,
I
right?
will say that with Laura K. Hamilton, though, I think the gradualness, because she does, the actual Anita Blake books, but then she has other stories and other books and
Mm-hmm.
anthologies,
Yep.
so she add to them. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where the gradualness comes in. But if you don't read any of those,
Right.
like when is that coming for you?
So when I write side stories, they're not big stories that impact the novels in a way that if a reader misses that short story, that
Yeah.
they don't understand what happens in novel 3. I don't
Mm.
do that. And I would be surprised if she did that.
She's
Do you know what I mean? Because every reader isn't buying anthology, some random anthology with one of your stories in it.
I think if you're a big enough fan though, you'll see your name because honestly, that's what I did. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Laura Hamilton, I'll pick that up, and then I'll be like, and I'll read
Yeah.
it.
It's one story. I don't know. That's just me though. But I also don't write books that are interdependent on each other. You can pick a book too, and it's a completely self-contained story. You don't need to have.
It doesn't happen very often, so that's awesome.
I'm a nerd,
That needs to
so.
happen more often.
I mean, you
Hey,
missed the big like stuff, like her relationship stuff, but the story itself for each Sybil book, there is self-contained mystery. So from client to conclusion happens in one book.
which
Nice.
people need to do more of. Everything doesn't have to be a series. Like, like sometimes it's nice just to read a book that is
And
one
be done.
cohesive story and be
Yep,
done.
and it's not a cliffhanger, and you don't have to rush out to go buy another one. I mean, I know what that is, right? That's from a author standpoint. That's continuing that tale for sales, right? Because people keep buying the next one and the next one and the next one. But sometimes the story doesn't warrant that,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like it's your responsibility as an author to know that, to not be like seduced by greed, to say, you know what, this is a one and done story, and let it and be comfortable with it being a one and done story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Discovery of Witches did that, like book 2.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh,
I
so
think we
good.
could have did without it. Kind of like,
Like, is
Yeah.
that the one where they were supposed to have like been focusing on a book and then the whole story just went away from that book they were looking into? I don't know if I'm remembering the right one. Is that
no,
the one with the blue book
that
cover?
sounds like that one. The one, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, because I think that's what had got my attention when I started reading it was that, oh, there's this mystery about this book. And then the book never is mentioned again after that, and I was so mad.
See, you can't do that. You burn readers like that. You just do. You burn readers like that. You just do.
I'm
I
So
like,
don't
I.
even think I don't think I read the last one.
Mm-mm.
I was like,
I
See,
just read the
because you
first
got
one.
you burn readers like that. I just try to be the type of, so most of the time when I'm writing for me, and I try to do things that I would enjoy or like as a reader. And so I don't, if I pick up book 3 of a series, and there aren't any books 1 and 2, and 3 looks like a good story, I want to be able to read 3 and be done. Now, if I love it, right, I'll go get 1 and 2. But I don't want to feel like I've lost a lot having not read it. And when you get to books like Jim Butcher's book series, holy Christmas. It's like 35 of them. So if you come in on book 33, look how much you've missed if they're interdependent.
Yeah, I'm like, because I get burnt out on
So-
series. I'm so impatient anymore when it comes to series. Like, I do 2 tops. I'm like, I couldn't even finish the Harry Potter series. I think I stopped on 5. I just got so done.
That's
Yeah,
kind
a
of
lot of
like
times-
TV series. Like I go to Netflix and I go to movies because I'm like, I need something that's done in 2 hours. Like I don't need it. Like I'm tired of like stretching it out. I need it to be done in an hour and 90. No, I just want something that has a beginning, a middle, and a conclusion. I don't have to watch it. I'm
But
just
most of the stories come like that. They started being repetitive, like the Stephanie Plum series.
yeah.
Like that books are so repetitive, and I loved her as a character, but it's just like how many times she's gonna like have to have a bad guy get into some shenanigans, botch the thing, and then
I think that's tough. Like I think when I'm thinking about like Midsummer Murders, right? They're like in season 25. And it's so hard. Like you can tell they're really stretching it, right? I'm like, right. Because one of the unique things about the series is that people have odd ways of dying. And so it's really difficult. You can see the writers stretch. When the person got killed by a block of cheese, I'm like, yeah, we're stretching for unique ways to kill people. But yeah, I definitely think that the Dresden Files, they're still really great books, but there's a lot of them. And so if you go pick up the new one, that should be a self-contained book because you have 34 other ones that came before it that if you are brand new to it, you're just completely out of the loop. And that's one of the things I learned from reading Robert B. Parker books and Sue Grafton books, like mystery books. Those mysteries are beginning, done. There might be like little clues to some major, like overarching thing, but they're small. And they crescendo into something bigger in like book 5, and all of book 5 is about that, and it pulls in all the stuff from the other books that you may not have read. And so I learned that. No one told me that. I learned that from reading mystery books. I love mystery books, and so they are always little self-contained things. They don't have a part 2 or a book 3 or a book 4. They're just all independent mysteries with the same character. And so there are no cliffhangers or anything like that. It's all resolved. It's as resolved as it can be. So I really enjoyed that. And so as a reader, and so my books tend to be like that. And that helps with world building too. Like how much of the world is it going to involve? Right. So how much world do I need?
Right. We are coming to the end. Woo!
This is so hard ending. It's like, right, so about.
I was about to ask another question.
I know. I was like, wait.
This is a long one.
Like, world building is a massive topic that
Mm-hmm.
you can go into details about
That would probably
any
be a part.
aspect. Probably more like 10 parts.
Like seriously, it's a huge thing. I agree.
Yeah, thank everybody for watching. Thank you, Nicole, for coming on, giving us great content. It was wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to say anything? You can plug your books. You can,
Oh, sure.
yeah, anything you want.
So definitely go check out Kill 3 Birds, A Kingdom of Avis Mystery. That's my new work, set in the Kingdom of Avis, a serial killer murder, in an avian goddess worshiping culture. Definitely check out Mocha Memoirs Press. We are going to have like a flash sale soon. So go check it out. It's mochamemoirspress.com. Sign up for our newsletter. We do give away a free ebook every month. So if you don't like to our subscribers, and so if you don't like this month's ebook, just wait till next month. We'll have a different one for you. And so definitely check us out. Again, mochamemoirspress.com. You can find me on Twitter at Nicole G. Kurtz is my handle, or at Facebook at Nicole G. Kurtz, or NicoleGivensKurtz.net.
Yay! And that is our show. Thank you for coming to the Right Talk.
Thank you guys.